Here is the biggest problem that people who have had a shoulder surgery or significant injury are going to face. The wrong people are deciding when you are ready to return to an active and athletic lifestyle. If you've had a surgery, for example, those orthopedic consultants will work off post-operative timelines. If everything is looking good as expected, let's say 8 or 10 weeks, they're going to sign you off and you probably won't see them again unless you've got a problem. So you are then passed on to the physio, and what happens here is that they often work on a standard protocol. Once you have cleared each stage based on competency of some relatively low level exercises, the protocol will then say that you are good to go. So you are released and told that you can go back to training and sport. However, and some of you will have lived this, there's a problem. Why does discharged feel a bit more like good luck and be careful? Now, I'm not throwing shade on anyone. I know exactly what it's like because I've been there. I was discharged multiple times only to dislocate my shoulder again. That happened 6 times in total, each one making me more fearful and less confident. If you're in the same situation, what I want you to know is there is a gap between being cleared and being capable. And that is what I want to talk about today, and to show you what it is, what it looks like, and then a little bit about how I navigated it. So stick around until the end of the video. For those that don't know me, my name is Tim Stevenson. I'm a shoulder reconditioning specialist. I've been in elite sport strength and conditioning for the last 18 years, and I managed to recondition a very battered and banged up shoulder to be able to do handstands, human flags, and muscle ups. So I'm not talking to you from a textbook today, I'm talking from lived experience. Now, when we talk about someone being cleared, what we're referring to is that the tissues have healed and you have probably got some basic function restored. Capable is when you can actually trust your shoulder within the athletic and active context that you want to live. So if you are one of those sorts of people, active and athletic, you don't need to do the same rehab as somebody who's living a sedentary lifestyle and pottering around in the garden. So what I'm going to explain to you today is how to get back to sport, fitness, strength training, playing with your kids, or saying yes to more of the things that excite you, not whether you're able to lift a saucepan down from the top shelf or trim the apple tree, whatever it might be. But here's the mistake, and to show you where it came from, let me tell you 2 quick stories, because the rules that we use today were written a very long time ago and they were never written for the shoulder. So we're going to start in 500 BC, ancient Greece, and the story goes that there's a wrestler called Milon of Croton. He wanted to get strong, so he picked up a newborn calf and carried it on his shoulders. The next day he did it again and again. Over time the calf grew a little bit heavier each day, and so Milon got a little bit stronger. By the time that calf was full grown, Milon could carry a bull. And that is the essence of progressive overload. The guy got stronger before anyone had a word for the principle. And my question here is whether we actually apply that principle effectively when it comes to rehabbing a shoulder. Story number 2 is now 1945, and an army doctor named Thomas DeLorme is rehabbing soldiers' knees as they return from the war. This guy is a keen weightlifter himself, so he starts using his own principles and loads them up with some progressively heavier resistance. And you know what? It worked. He was getting way better results than his peers were, and then he turned that into a system. Now we all of a sudden have reps, sets, frequency, and load variables which we can apply to training and rehabilitation. So even if Milon is just a good story, DeLorme isn't. The way that we write training programs today still rests on the work that was done to the lower body, established over 70 years ago. So here is the question I want you to think about. Do we apply appropriate progressive overload to the shoulder during rehabilitation, and should we be training the shoulder like it's a knee or a hip? Because what happened in reality is the rule book that worked on the lower body has been applied almost carte blanche to the shoulder. The shoulder is not designed like the hip, and it's certainly not designed like the knee, yet the industry for some reason has effectively treated them the same way. So how do we change this perspective, and why is this relevant to you trying to rehabilitate a shoulder? Well, let's go to some functional anatomy. Your shoulder is the most mobile joint in your whole body. Its job is to position the hand in space. It's built to reach, throw, climb, catch, swing, grab, and it can do all of those things with beautiful extreme precision, speed, and power. Your hip, on the other hand, is held together by a deep socket. It's got a joint capsule that is designed for stability, a lot of ligamentous tissue to hold that thing in place, and there's a ton of musculature to support it. Your shoulder doesn't have all of that. The humeral head sits on a small, shallow socket that's about 1/3 of its size. The capsule is built for mobility, so the shoulder can move. There's not a lot of static tissue to hold it in place like ligaments, so it almost entirely relies on neuromuscular control. And that means that timing, coordination, and rhythm are paramount to its function. The hip is a load-bearing, strength-based joint. The way that I frame this now is I think about the shoulder as a skill-based joint. Yes, strength matters, but timing and control matter more. Let me explain. Now, your brain doesn't mess about when it comes to your shoulder. You have got so many different movement options available that it's super easy for the brain to find a different one that skirts around the pain or movement problem that you are having. When something hurts, or even when your brain thinks it might hurt, it sends out a protective strategy. And the way it protects you is by taking movement options away. It makes the shoulder move less, fix more, and it sticks to what feels safer. Fewer movement options to the brain feels safer, there's less risk. So in the early stages of an injury or post-surgery, that's probably exactly what we want. It's a smart protective strategy. So then the early stages of rehab rightly seek to restore basic movement patterns and reduce pain. And often that's where people stop. But for active and athletic people, that is the floor. It's a long way from the finish line. A shoulder that you can genuinely trust isn't one that hurts less, it's one that feels capable. And what capable feels like is being able to move in the ways that matter under the intensities that come with your chosen sport or activity. The more ways that your shoulder can move with control under more progressive intensities, the more athletic it becomes and the more robust it becomes. Don't think about those two things as being different. For a joint that is built on mobility, being athletic and being robust are the same property. Having an answer to an athletic situation when it stops becoming predictable. The shoulder with only one way to do something or limited options is fragile because the day that something unexpected happens, it's got no backup. And the brain knows that, and that's often why we feel vulnerable or apprehensive in certain positions or patterns. A shoulder with a lot of different control ways to do something is robust because it's always got another option or another answer. Remember, this is how the shoulder is designed at an anatomical level, and if you've had shoulder instability in the past, you will know exactly what that feels like. Robustness doesn't come from being stiff and protected. Robustness is about having options and confidence. Now, the science behind all of this is fairly complicated because we're dealing with the brain, but the good news is that the practice is actually really simple. And here it is in 4 words: move in more ways. Most shoulder training is the same handful of patterns, same plane of motion, same tempos, predictable, minimal loads, nothing at all chaotic or particularly challenging. Horizontal, vertical press and pull, all kind of sounds a lot like what we'd give a knee. And if it comes to being standard rehab exercises, they are often chronically underloaded and lacking in progression. It's kind of the equivalent of Mylon only carrying the car for a few weeks and then deciding that would be enough because it was getting a little bit heavy. That kind of thinking doesn't make you one of the greatest Olympic wrestlers of antiquity, and I can't tell you how pleased I am to have got that word in. The sport and the life that you want to live probably isn't predictable. I hope it's fast and messy and chaotic because that's often where the fun lies. And if you've only ever trained your shoulder in clean, straight lines, of course the brain is going to panic when it's confronted with something that it has absolutely no idea how to handle because you never showed it anything but rigid monotony. So rehab needs to look more varied. It needs to look reactive, a little bit chaotic. You need to explore positions, speeds, patterns, intensities. You make your shoulder organize itself under those different conditions, and then you're going to start to feel a lot more confident. So if you take one line from this whole video, take this. I'm going to say it again. Move in more ways. And let me give you an example as to how I use this and the results that I got. After being discharged from my rehabilitation following the final and 6th dislocation, the one that I opted not to have a surgery on, I still had zero confidence in my shoulder and I was always fearful of redislocation. So I embarked on the journey of learning to handstand, which then led me into calisthenics, which forced me to confront the positions I was most scared of head on. And throughout that process, I did 0 rotator cuff exercises, not one I don't think. I just moved well, listened to my shoulder, earned the right to progress at each stage, And that's not to say that rotator cuff and physio style exercises aren't necessary. They are, and we use them with every single client that we work with now. But the results that I got were beyond what anyone else would have expected, including myself. And it just goes to show what is possible with a different strategy and approach. So let's land this. We need to stop training shoulders to be safe. We need to train them to be capable, because with capable comes confident. Give it back some options, give it some confidence and some greater progressive overload, and you'll see that gap between cleared and confident change. Now, if you want to know where to start, I've built a free 2-minute shoulder assessment. It will show you exactly what your next step should be, and you can find the link in the description. And if this concept, the ideas we're talking about made something click, we'd really appreciate it if you like the video, subscribe to the channel, because it is my intention to continue to share information that is going to help you to rebuild injured shoulders so that you can live, train, and compete pain-free and with confidence. We'll see you next time.